Built out in San Diego, California. The PBY Catalina, as you see, taking off for us today. That's 104 feet from wingtip to wingtip. That's a pair of 1840 radial engines, 1830. I'm sorry. Radial engines on this PBY, the Catalina. On this afternoon, Bob, come on, neighbors, so far aboard in Bob Coast. And now, the C-47, probably, well, no, it has been voted the safest airliner in the world. And yes, they are still using some C-47. They're known as DC-3s in the general aviation end of it, as commercial airline main hauling aircraft.
It's one of the safest planes ever made as far as airliners. They used to be an airliner. That's the military version here.
Now this C-47 is from the American Air Power Museum.
That's probably the one that flew over our house. It's like
the wingtip. The airplane, making all 1,200 horsepower work. Well, you don't use 1,200 horsepower per engine for cruise, but it would cruise along about 105 knots. That's about 120 mile an hour across the ground. But the aircraft carried 1,750 gallons of fuel on board. Now, with that amount of fuel the aircraft carried on board, it had a 22-hour duration. In other words, the time he took off, he wouldn't have to be back around for 22 hours. Now, you heard me talk earlier about this World War II aircraft. They were not ergonomically present, so they didn't like it back then. There were no bathrooms on that airplane. Didn't have Ziploc plastic bags either. Can you imagine taking off and flying for 22 hours in an airplane with no bathroom on board today? Now Jim Bussell comes through. Jim Bussell's helmet from Salem, New Hampshire with this beautiful C-47. Now the C-47 probably has more names than every airplane flying. The DC-3, the C-47, the R-4D, the Gooney Bird, the Biscuit Bomber, Spooky, Toto. That's all the same airplane. Douglas Corporation built the airplane as the DC-3. It was the third generation airplane built. Actually, the DC-2 was certified to be an airliner. And one of the guys who helped certify that airplane was a gentleman who flew all the way across the Atlantic Ocean the first time by himself. In an airplane called the Spirit of St. Louis. That's right, his name was Lindbergh. He helped certify the DC-2, the Douglas Corporation second aircraft.
Yeah.
The DC-2 and the DC-3 looked very similar. The DC-2 was a flat side. He looked at the fuselage, it was almost flat. Now, as Bob Hill comes to the left-hand side with his beautiful PBY Catalina, consolidated build airplane. This airplane was built in 1935. This airplane actually went in production. This airplane was built. This is probably the most original Catalina you were ever going to find. They have the logbooks of this airplane from day one. Now the PBY Norman flew with a crew of 7 on board this aircraft. It could carry 400 or 500 pound bombs. Yes, it was a bomber. 250 had also had 250 caliber cluster bombs on board. It had 30 caliber cannon out the tail of the aircraft. There's a little door that's called the belly of the aircraft. They could actually shoot out the back side. There's probably one of the prettiest wings you're ever going to see in an aircraft right there. That beautiful wing-shaped wing platform on the C-47 aircraft, that is one pretty wing on an airplane. Again, powered by an 1830 Pratt & Whitney engine. The big old ham sander props that they're walled at 1,200 horsepower in the thrust to drag a C-47 through the skies at a whopping, well, it could do 180 miles per hour, but it cruised probably about 160 like more comfortably. its configuration, it had all 14 stretcher carriers on board. It had over 8,000 pound used load of the aircraft. And you probably see pictures of the late night movies where they actually put the cargo door aside, they enlarged the cargo door aside, they enlarged the cargo door, and they're loading Jeeps in the side of that airplane. It normally flew with a crew of 3 or 4 men on board the C-47, the Dakota, the R-40, the Goody Bird Spooky, and the Biscuit Bomber. Now, it got the name Biscuit Bomber because during the Berlin airlift over the wall, when they would actually fly these airplanes hauling food into Berlin, they would drop food over the wall.
All that I just did.
And it became known as the Biscuit Bomber.
Okay. That's all you got to do.
That's the car you want, dude. Popping at it.
Now you take this PBY Catalina airplane. Down in the South Pacific, they would take that aircraft, paint it entirely black. I mean entirely black. Top, bottom, wings, the whole thing. It was a black airplane. It got called the Black Cat. It was a night fighter. They would fly missions in the dead of night at what they call a mast height, 50 feet off the water. You could not see this airplane till it was on top of you. PBYs were given credit for helping to sink Bismarck. And most of the Japanese, they actually spotted the Japanese fleet at Midway. They saw the move Midway with Strawberry 5. The Catalina had actually spotted the Japanese fleet at Midway. This Catalina is the only combat-proven aircraft that actually did have combat during World War II. As Jim Book Cell comes through with this C-47, this aircraft, when they bought it at the American Air Power Museum, the first time this airplane was in civilian category. In 1944, this airplane went to the RAF. It stayed there until 1996. It went to the restored by the Israeli Air Force, and they brought the airplane back here. The condition you see today in the American Air Power Museum. Now the exhaust system on the Catalina, the actual exhaust goes on the top of the wing. And I was talking to Bob Hill about the pilot of the airplane this afternoon. I was talking with him over the weekend. I said, Bob, what did he do about the flames? Now, if you ever saw one of these big old radials fly at nighttime, you put the power up on it, that 130 octane fuel put a beautiful blue flame out the exhaust system. Now, when you're flying at nighttime, you got an all-black airplane. It's supposed to be stealthy at nighttime. You got this blue flame coming out the exhaust stacks on top. It was very easily spottable by the Japanese from high overhead. They said, oh, they took care of that. They had spark arresters put on the exhaust system of the aircraft. It actually did away with that blue flame coming out of the exhaust stack. So it was totally, you could not see this airplane at all at nighttime. You might hear something, you don't know where it was coming from. It was a Black Cat coming in at mast height. Over 3,000 PBY Catalinas were built during its production run. There's 4 flying in the United States today, maybe 3 more out of countries, and about 7 flying in the world. Guess what? You got one here. A quarter of the United States fleet of PBYs they got a year.
Go ahead, Air Boss.
I thought there was 8.
You said 50.
Be advised, G4 is taxiing right now. Charlie taxiway.
Now again, you see the stripes on this C-47. The 3 white and 2 black. That is the normally mentioned D-Day stripes on the airplane. To identify this aircraft as a friendly Allied aircraft.
Lost the training.
No, why is he holding the cable?
This C-47, it still has a seat inside the aircraft. The original canvas seat.
Oh, okay.
Alright, guys. Ready?
Mr. Bob Hill, the controls of this beautiful PBY Catalina. Bob Cope is going to right chin's airplane for us this afternoon. Now Bob, flying this PBY Force Airplane, he's also a Canadair CL-215 rated pilot, which is a flying boat aircraft that actually does fire bombing. Bob was qualified to do fire bombing with that Canadair CL-215.
Jim is going to widen out a little bit. I'm going to talk about this here to the southeast side.
He was a PBY pilot and a Medal of Honor award winner. We'll call it an award. He's a Medal of Honor winner, excuse me, during World War II. And he won that award flying a PBY, such as you see flying for us this afternoon. He made 4 rough order landings with a PBY, taking on a heavy combat fire to pick up down Japanese. They were within 600 feet of the shoreline when they made the last rough order landing with the PBY. They were popping ribbons in the belly of the aircraft every time they landed the airplane. They rescued 15 pilots in one afternoon. 4 times landed the airplane in 18-foot seas. Rescued 15 down B-25 pilots and P-47 pilots in one evening, actually. That's why the man won the Medal of Honor. Sorry to say that Nathan G. Gordon, the Medal of Honor winner, died 2 weeks ago today.
Oh, the truck will open it down.
There's a nice look at all that. There's that beautiful wing on the C-47. Nice job of Mr. Jim Boussel. From Sound New Hampshire Flying American Air Power Museum, C-47 Dakota. Duty Bird. R4D. DC-3. Spooky. Biscuit Bomber.
Mustang Airbus, yep. Mustang Airbus, yep.
One more time, Mr. Bob held this beautiful PBY, the Catalina. Again, when they painted an airplane all black, it was the Black Cat. You look at the column between the wing and the fuselage of the aircraft, that actual post, that was the navigator's position. You could sit up in there, a little blister on each side of the column, sit inside and look at the side of the window. That's the navigator's side. Those big blisters on the side, the fuselage back there, plexiglass covers. They actually rolled back like a roll-top disc. That's how they pulled the down pilots on board. And Mr. Jim Boussel, again, a nice photo pass for us with that C-47 aircraft. Ah, the sounds of round. Nice shot at the top end of all that time.
PBY C-47 Airbus.